Welcome! Today we're gonna make plates, more plates, because I already did one video with how I do my plate, but I've been working a lot on the design and I come up with what I think is the right plate for me. I'm gonna make it in a little bit of a different way this time. I will be introducing this tube, some sticks, and this mattress, and a few more things. So I hope you will join me and look forward to show you what I'm gonna do. I only recently started out doing plates, and one of the reasons, or actually there's several reasons, but one of the reasons is that it takes so much space up in the kiln. Not so much when you bisque fire them, because you can stack them on top of each other. I've even seen potters that put them like this, so they can have 100 plates in a kiln. But when you glaze them, of course, you can't stack them. So one plate, and especially if it's a dinner plate, maybe you can only have like one plate on a shelf, so it's very expensive to fire them. Until I found this nice kiln material for plates. And I think I showed it in the last video, but this is how it looks. And you basically put a plate on it and you can stack it on top of each other. And then you can actually have maybe 4 or 5 plates in each main shelf. And around it, of course, you can still put some cups, something with the same height. So that way it becomes much more efficient. The other reason for not doing it is that people were telling me it was so difficult to make plates and they often break and you get S-cracks in the bottom and all these kind of terrible stories. But I found that, at least the way I make them, it never happens. Out of the 20, 30 something plates I've done so far, it's only been a couple of them that actually had a small S-crack, and none of them went through. So I could still use them. Of course, I couldn't sell them with S-cracks, but it was still useful because inside they were seals. The first ones I did, actually the very first one I did was this. It was supposed to be a dinner plate. The inside size of it is actually the same size of a full-size dinner plate because the flange takes up so much space. But then when I started using it, it feels too small. Maybe I just like food too much, but it kind of feels too small. So today I label this as a lunch or a cake plate. It's still very nice, and I came up actually with this new glaze that was supposed to be like a light blue grayish. It turned out green, as you see, but it's a long story, but basically it's because the cobalt I was using was reacting with the tin, and that creates green. But I actually like it very much. So I did also a bigger size. So this is more like a dinner plate. This is more or less the same as this. I like this small flange because they stack so well. You can have like 10 plates like this, so it doesn't take so much space in the cabinet. And this is one of the things I like about tableware, because of course, when you do it yourself and you do it like a ceramic artist, you want it to look nice. So there's an aesthetic point with any pottery you do. But with tableware, there's also a functional thing to it, a functional aspect that is very important, because a plate that you cannot wash, a plate that is not flat, or at least goes in instead of going out, is not very functional. I heard that from a chef actually very recently. He don't like plates if they're too high in the middle. If you have a dish with sauces, the sauce would float to the end, which doesn't look so nice. So it's actually better that it floats a little bit inside, or it's completely flat. What I found with my swirly design, I make these swirls with my finger, is it actually works really well when you have a sauce, because it kind of makes the sauce pool up across the plate. It looks beautiful. So I made this, and I think it works well. Then I also tried to make them in porcelain. I work in a different workshop in porcelain, and actually it turned out really nice too. They're nice and light, and I actually used one of my stoneware. Actually, it's an all-round glaze, floating blue, but it's formulated for stoneware. But I think it actually turned out really nice on porcelain too. It's a little bit lighter than on stoneware, but I think it's okay too. Lastly, I tried, because as you know, I've been doing a lot of swirlware or agateware, where you combine different colors of clay and you mix it into each other on the wheel, and it becomes this swirly design where you don't actually use any colors in glaze. You can use them with a clear glaze, or you can use them as I did with some of my bowls and vases, not glazed, and just polish them. It looks very nice too, a silky surface. But the plates, of course, I wanted to glaze because, well, it's for food, so I want to be completely sealed. And I made them, and I mean, it turned out okay. But I personally think they're too colorful. They're sort of taking away too much attention from the food. Some people like them, so I don't know. I'm not sure I'm going to continue with this design. It's still the same, basic design for a flat plate. So very small flange, very big flat area. And then, of course, my little swirls in the middle. But today I'm going to do plates, same design, but in a different way. And I was just showing you in introduction this tube. You may wonder, what is that for? Well, it's a technique that I've seen a lot of potters use. And some people call it like cheating, doing plates. And I don't think there's anything cheating in pottery. You do whatever you have to do to make whatever you want to do. That's how it is. But with this, one of the challenges with a plate is to make it flat. Because if we just talk about, you definitely don't want to fall out on the side. You want it to be flat, primarily. So what some plotters are doing are using a tube like this, and to push it down. So you do the basic centering. I'm going to show you in a second. You do the basic centering, and you push it out to like the basic flat shape. But then you use this to push it down evenly to a nice, large, flat plate. And then, of course, not of course, but what happens when you do that is that very often you don't get a very even size. So it will be a little bit uneven. But then you just cut out the exact size you want. You cut out the outer millimeter, a few millimeters or centimeters, something, so it becomes perfectly round. So it also serves another purpose, and that is to get the plate completely round and exactly the size that you want. I tried with a roller, a wooden roller first, but it makes too much friction, and so it's difficult to control it. And then I saw lots of potters are using these PVC tubes. And I think this is for drainage or something. I picked it up in the local hardware store for less than $1. So it's very, very cheap. And this is a little bit too long, and of course, I don't need this end of it. So I marked it here, as you can maybe see. I marked it to the size of my wheel. Now, I want it to be wider than my wheel head, but not so wide that it hits my splash pan. So I made it just wide enough so that I have something to hold on to, but still I can push it further down than the limit of my splash pan. Because, especially when I'm throwing these plates, I do use quite a lot of water, so I want my splash pan. I could, of course, take my splash pan on, but then I would have so much to clean afterwards, and I hate cleaning. So I'm going to cut this. I'm just going to sand off the end of it. It doesn't serve any purpose, but it's just going to be nicer to work with. So, smooth and nice and ready to use. I'm also having these sticks, and you may wonder, what is that for? It's really just to measure. Because of course you can use a caliper or you can use a ruler or something to measure, but when you have to do repeat throwing, as I'm going to do with plates, because you don't make one plate, you make multiple plates, it's much easier to take a stick and just mark it up with a marker, or I'm going to use tape, because even if it gets a little bit muddy, you can still see the tape. So I'm going to mark one of them up to the outer space of my plate, and the other one I'm going to mark up for the inner space. So the difference between where the flange starts and where the plate ends. I'm going to have these two. I'm going to store them. I'm going to keep them, because then when I later have to go back and make more plates with the same design, if they turn out nice, I will be able to use them. So what about the mattress? Well, I don't think I'm going to show you yet, because it has to do with trimming. And I will show you when we get to that. So let's go to the workshop and get some real work done. Now we're ready to throw some plates. So the next question is what clay to use, what size to use, and how much clay to use. I'm going to do some tests because, as I said, it's been a journey for me to create these plates. I know the basic shape of my plates. I tested the small ones, the bigger ones, but I want to make them just a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna go for 26 centimeters, and I already marked it up on, not this one, but the other stick. And I'm gonna test some different glaze. So that's a big matrix. I can show it to you. So I'm gonna test basically 3 kinds of clay. The ones you saw, the stoneware ones was made with one of my favorite clays, a high iron, very red, dark red clay. It's very beautiful, but I also want to try another one of my favorites, this gray clay that also comes out beautiful, even in the parts where there's no glaze. And I want to try it with a black clay that I also like a lot. So 3 different clays, and I think 5, 7, 8 maybe different glazes. So I need to throw 30 plates or something for this test. I'm not going to show you all of it, but I'm going to start out with this gray clay that I like a lot. And then there's a question of how much clay, because I do want a decent thickness, but I don't want the plate to be too heavy. If you look up in traditional potters, classic pottery tables of how much clay to use for what kind of pots, the ones I've found, at least, say for a dinner plate, it's somewhere between 4 and 5 pounds, so 1,800 to 2,200 grams. I think that's a lot. I'm afraid it will be too thick, and maybe some of those tables are based on trimming a foot, which I'm not. I'm going to keep it flat. So I'm going to try and start out with 1.5 kilo. For the smaller ones, I've been doing 700-800 grams. But of course, you use a lot more clay the bigger the size, because the total amount of space it takes up require more clay. So I'm going to try out with 1.5 kilo and see how that goes. Maybe I have to adjust it. So only wedged up this bowl, and I'll see how it goes. So now I think it's good enough to start using my new PVC tube. And I have no idea how that's gonna go. But one thing I do know is it needs to be wet. Because even though there's very little friction on a PVC surface, I think we need to keep it wet. And I also think we need at least some water on the surface. So let's try it out, see how it goes. It's important, of course, that you keep it straight. And I'm just going to try. It surely wants to drag me around, and I think when it does, it creates these little bubbles that are not so good. And there will be a little bit of clay. It's actually not that much sticking to the tube. I'm going to wet it again. What I can feel now is also it's very important to keep it very centered, because if you start moving it out of the exact center, then it will drag you around. I keep it wet, keep the surface of my plate, or what will become a plate, wet. Now we're getting closer. Yeah, actually, I'm way above the size. I was aiming for 26 centimeters, and that's here. Anyway, that's fine, because now I can show you the second part. Now you can see this is actually very flat. So far, very good. Now it's time to cut out the plate in the right size. And I already measured it on this stick. But what I found is it's a little difficult to use it for the centering. So instead, I'm going to use a caliper. I'm just going to set my caliper to exactly the same size that I have on my stick, which is perfect now, because this one is easier to center. So now we have the exact size. I just measure it here again, and it's perfect. And I'm just going to cut through very slowly, basically. And cut away this part. This clay, of course, can be wetted up immediately and used again. So we don't even need to reclaim this. And now we have a beautiful surface here. Very clean, very flat, with a nice edge. It's completely centered. So that actually was a lot easier than I was expecting. But that's good. So the next step, at least for the design that I'm doing, is raising the edge. And some potters are just using a thumbnail. You can push it in here. You can also use a rib, put it in. I used to use this tool that I made specifically for that with the right angle. But what I found is that because I made it for a different wheel where we have, well, it's a long story, but that was room for it. But here, as you can see, there's no room for it because of the splash pan. So instead, I made this little tool, and I just got a nice machine that I can use for making these tools. I'll show you one day. But this tool basically does the same thing. It helps me raise it to a certain angle, and it goes right in here. So let's try and see how that goes. All wooden tools need to be wet, very wet. Otherwise, they stick to your material. And see how that easily goes. And I just want to clean the edge a bit. Another thing that I found when I did these first versions of this is that I made the flanges too thin. And first of all, I don't like the aesthetics of it. I like them to be a little more heavy. Also, there's a functional issue. If they're too thin, they chip off too easily. And so by making them a little bit thicker, I get the aesthetic I want. And also, of course, they don't fall over so easy. So now we basically have the plate. It was incredibly fast. I just want to do a couple of things. I want to make sure that the inside of my plate is completely smooth. So I'm going to use a rib in here. I'm going to take the flange and make sure that it's also smooth and nice. Then I'm going to use a chamois piece of leather to smoothen the edge of my my flange. I think the sort of design I was looking for is right now. I promise you that I also wanted to mark the inner side of the pot. So let me just see if I can open this. And because I mean, if I'm using my little flange tool, I don't know where it ended up now. Oh, probably dropped it somewhere. But the little wooden tool, it will end up being almost the same. But still, just for measuring, I want to make this second stick. Because that way I can easily check. Now I'm just marking it up with a marker, pen, but I will put the red tape on because it's much more convenient. I'll add that later. Ah, there it is. So now it's more or less done. But I also want to add my signature to them, which is not really unique for me. Lots of potters are doing this. But I like, as I said, it creates a nice surface on the inside of the pot, and that's the spiral. And the spiral is very easy to use or make. Just use a finger, whatever size finger works for you. Start in the middle, and then you slowly go out. You have to go faster in the beginning, slower in the end, of course, because the circle is smaller. But it's very easy to make. The only question is how much pressure you apply. Don't go too fast. And I like to let my finger go slowly, so you don't get like a very sudden drop out of the spiral, but rather a soft. And now it can look a little bit dramatic once you make it, but I kind of push down the tops a little bit with a sponge, so it doesn't get too high. Just wanted to mark a little bit and help the glaze create this beautiful flow. And so I think that's it. That was the first plate. Let's make some more. Oh yeah, one thing, the weight and the thickness. I think it's okay. I also think that we may be able to do it with a little less clay. This was 1.5 kilo. It's really difficult to judge how heavy it feels now, of course, because it's only after it's dried and fired and stuff that I get the feeling of it. But as this is still in my testing phase, I think I want to go ahead and try with a little less clay on the next ones. This time I'm going to try out with 1.4 kilo, so 100 grams less. And I'm going to weigh this always very, very precise. Not 1.4-ish, but exactly 1.4. Because that's one of the secrets about doing repeat throwing. Of course, the sticks and the measurement tools and stuff helps, but unless you throw with exactly the same amount of clay, they're never going to be the same. So for this kind of pottery, for my mugs, cups, plates, I measure the clay very precisely. For more decorative pieces and vases and stuff, I just grab whatever I think works for the pot. I think this is plenty to cut off what I need. Last time I cut off like 1 centimeter, and this is actually pretty circular, so I don't need to cut off that much. So again, I'm going to use my caliper and just make sure that it's exactly the right size, and it is. And my needle tool to mark it up. Yeah, I'm going to cut through. And again, I'm going to wedge this up for my next plate. I'm just going to smoothen the edge a little bit, like this. Add a little bit of water out here for the with a flange tool to work. And again, wet it. It is wood. If it's not completely wet, it will stick to your clay. So again, it is super fast and super easy. So just gonna clean up the flange a little bit. I don't think there was any problems in making this, and this was 1.4 kilo. And if we check, even though I didn't put the tape on yet, if you check the inner space, it's perfect, spot on. And if we check the outer space with this one, it's also perfect, because it will, of course, be a little bit smaller. That's why I made it 26 centimeter. It will become a little bit smaller when I make the flange, a little bit smaller when it dries. So I think this is the right size. I'll find out once we're done with all the throwing and firing and everything. So again, I'm just gonna smoothen the edges a little bit with my chamois. And especially with functional ware, kitchenware like this, you don't want any sharp edges, because sharp edges look good, but they chip off very easily. And you want this to look good for many years. And so now, I don't think I actually need to, maybe a little bit. One of the problems people have with plates is the cracks. But with the tube, I'm going to apply so much pressure. I'm going to compress the bottom so much that I doubt it. But I just want to go over it with my my rib, just to be sure that it's completely flat. And be careful not to press too much when you get to the edge, because again, we don't want that shape. We want a flat plate or going into the middle a little bit. Now it's flat. Just going to smooth it with my sponge. Add a little bit of water for the spiral, and then I will do the spiral. And once again, just smoothen out the edges just a little bit, and that's it. It is indeed a very easy and fast way to make plates. I'm actually a little bit surprised about how easy it is. This time I'm going to try out with 1.3 kilo. So I'm going 100 grams down again. So first one was 1.5, 1.4 for the second, 1.3. Because I think I could get a little bit thinner in the bottom. See, there's a little bit of clay sticking, but it's actually very little. Just keep washing it off and wetting it. Yeah. It could take just a couple of millimeters more. I think that's perfect. That's it. I think 1.3 kilo feels right. And I mean, I won't know for sure before it's completely done, but I think it's right. As you may have noticed, I don't wire off my plates. And why is that? Because most often you would see potters wire off the plates. I don't do it for two reasons. The main reason is that if you're using wooden bats or you're using casting bats, they release themselves because it soaks some of the water out of it, and then in a couple of days it releases itself. And therefore I don't need to cut it off. And also, when you cut it off with a wire like this, the problem is that when you have such a wide button, it tends to go up a little bit like that, not so much, but something like this. And that can lead to areas where it actually almost cut through. You've probably seen that with some potters as well. So for those two reasons, I don't do it. It's also much faster. Yesterday, I made 16 plates. And in the beginning, of course, it took a little longer time, but in the end, it only took like a minute or two. So today, they have dried overnight and are ready to be trimmed. But first, we have to look at this material that I showed you yesterday. This foam, this mattress, and what I'm going to use it for. Because I'm going to use it for trimming. When you want to trim a plate like this, when you turn it around, the problem is that you have this wide free-floating area, and when you trim on that, you very easily push it down. And when you do that, of course, you get the plate out of shape, and we get that internal shape we don't want. So in the past, what I've done is I put some bubble plast or something underneath it to kind of support it. But then I'm left with another problem, and that is for this design, with the flanges that are being this small, I want to trim it all the way down. So what you would usually do is when you put it on your wheel head, you would put some lumps of clay to keep it in place. But that's not going to work so well with these plates. Also, they're so big that they're actually touching the pins that I have on my my wheel head, so they don't fit. And of course I could put a bed on, but it won't really glue onto the bed. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a specialized foam chuck, you could say. So I'm going to glue some of this. I already cut them, but I'll get back to you on that, onto a bed. And that way I can put it underneath it. And I will of course make it round, so it'll support the plate completely where it's most sensitive. And it will be very easy to adjust it. And because the foam has this friction to it, it will actually hold the plate in place. The first cut here doesn't have to be very precise because we're not actually using the full size. I'm just cutting out some of it to be able to fit it to my bed and put it on my wheel head. I'll just use a scissor. This is a very easy material to work with. So now we have a better fit. And we can then use this to cut the right size. It is, as mentioned, very important that this material is centered on your final bed. So you could of course mark it up now, take it out, cut it out and put it back, but then you would need to center it at the same time that you're gluing it. So I'm thinking that it might be easier for me to actually glue it, at least in the middle, so it's stable, and then do the cutting, and then maybe lift it up and do the rest of the gluing. I think at least that's what I'm going to try. To glue something like this material, this foam, you need a glue that is strong enough to hold it. That's not too bad because you're applying a downward pressure, so it doesn't really fly that much around. But you need to be careful because some glue will actually eat the foam, so it drips through. And so you need a glue that is specially made for foam. You can probably get that in your builder's market. I already have one that I used to put up these insulation panels in my recording studio. So I'm going to put some of that on. Yeah, it's running out. Oh, there we go. I actually got a little bit too much on it, so I'm just gonna distribute it like this, a piece of paper, and then turn it around and put it here. Yeah, it actually sits quite well. Maybe I actually don't need more glue than that. Anyway, as mentioned, I already measured the inside of my plate, and I'm aiming for something like 20 centimeters. So now, of course, you need to figure out exactly how to do that. I think it may be a good idea to mark the middle. And I can do that with the pen. So now we have the middle, and then I can take, of course, half of that. So that's going to be 10 centimeters. And now I have this. So now I just need to put my pen here and slowly drive it around. So that should be perfect. I just want to double check, just because I don't want to be wasting this. So I just want to take one of my plates. This is one of my acadware plates. It actually matches the color of this pretty good. And if I take a look here, yeah, it looks good. Because I mean, you want it to be this width, but there's a small curve here, and you don't want it to hit that because you want it to have full support of the button. And I think this is going to work well. So far, so good. Now, of course, because we glued it on, I can't use a knife. I can't use the scissor. So instead, I'm going to use a sharp knife. I'm just going to go very easy on this. Oh, it actually slipped off. That was actually not so good, because now I have to center it again. So yeah, maybe there wasn't enough glue on it, or yeah, I don't know. I'll just add a little more. Maybe the pressure was just too much. Or maybe I should have waited a little bit until I started applying the pressure. So now I'm just gonna try and center it. I think that works. I'm just gonna continue here. I'm not gonna put so much pressure on this time. Yeah, maybe I just need to go the last part without the wheel spinning. So there we go. There's a lot of these crumbles. And I think we can clean it up a little bit. Yeah, of course now I can't use this for reclaim. That's okay. And so now I will add a little bit more glue here. So now I will try and center this before it dries. See, Now I think it's pretty well centered. And now it will probably be best to let it dry a little bit. But we can try it with this already thrown and fired plate. And yeah, I think this works great. Because the foam kind of have a friction to it, it won't actually move much. And of course, I still need to place my plate so it's centered. But I think this is gonna work well. And now I have full support of the button. And basically, I'm mostly gonna trim the corner, but then I'm also gonna just make sure that the button is completely smooth and nice. So that's my foam chuck for plates. I'm just gonna let this dry a little bit, and then I'll get back to you with the plates. Today, my plates have dried enough to start doing the trimming. And now take a look, because this have only dried about a day, and I can easily lift it off the plate. It releases itself. And now comes the third benefit of doing that instead of cutting it, because look at the button. It's so clean and smooth. Usually if you cut it with a wire, you would have, some inconsistencies that you need to trim out, but this is ready to go. So now we can go and trim the plates. First step, of course, is to center them on my new foam chuck. That's very easy. I'm not very good with tap centering, but you could use tap centering for this. As you just push it a little bit. They don't actually need to be super centered because I'm not going to do a foot rim. I'm just going to do the edges, so it's not as sensitive as if I was doing the foot rim. So I think now it's close to perfect, and it fits really well. It doesn't move around because the friction of the foam and the clay works really well together. I'm only going to do very little trimming on this design of plate. I basically just want to round off this edge, because now it's sharp and there's some leftovers. And even though it sits well on this foam, I still want to keep a hand on it and just to make sure that it doesn't fly away. This particular clay is very groggy, so I want to try and smooth it out as much as possible. Next, I'm going to use a metal rib to just make sure that it is completely flat at my button. So not much more than this. And finally, I want to go over it with a very soft rib. These red ones are really good for that. And just smooth it. You could also, if you want to, use a shiny stone, or this is a nice one that I picked up, have a nice handle, and that way you can make it even smoother. And now you see the third or fourth, it may be, benefit of using this, because if you have it on your wheel head directly, and it sort of glues itself a little bit to that, it can be difficult to get it out, and you end up destroying the rim a little bit. But this, I can put my hands under, and I can just lift it off. It's very, very easy. And now we have a perfectly trimmed plate. The only thing left is to stamp it with my maker's mark, and that's maybe it's a fifth benefit of using this technique, because I can move it all to the side, because then it's supported. Because a lot of times when you try and push this, it will kind of create a little bulb underneath. But here I can just add it, and I can apply some pressure without fearing that it will break the plate. That's it. And if you look at the inside, there's no mark of the stamp. So, next one. So let's see if that releases itself as easy. It does. It just goes off very easy. Now the plates have almost dried. Just need to completely dry and then I will bisque fire them and glaze. This is part of my big plate experiment. I've been spending a lot of time over the past few months to find the plate design that I want to move forward with and maybe do some more production of that. And I came to this shape that I really like, and today I showed you a really nice way of throwing them so they're consistent and more or less the same. Still handmade, some little variations, but they more or less the same. And I tried out with 3 different clays, this gray one and this high iron red one, and this that will actually turn almost black. Can't see it right now, but it will after the bisque and glaze fire. Then I will move on with glaze experiment, and I will come back to you on that. I have 7, 8 different glazes I want to try. So I made almost 10 of each of them, 7, 8 of them. And I will combine that into a big matrix. I will show you how I do that and of course the results, but that will be in another video. But so far I'm really happy with the basic design. And just look, I mean, even with these ones, of course, be very careful when you handle your greenware because it's so super fragile. But look how nice they fit into each other. I mean, this is beautiful. It's just, that's what I said in the beginning I like about this design is that it's very efficient. You can actually stack a lot of plates like this in your cabinet. I like that. As I showed you in the beginning, I got these wonderful shelves for the glaze fire of my plates. So they take up less space. They're primarily meant for glaze fire, because for glaze fire, of course, you cannot stack the pots. For bisque, you can stack them, but there's a limit. I mean, I don't know for sure with this design. I talked with other potters that stacked 3, 4, that was fine, and they stacked 5 and 6, and some of them cracked. There is some sort of limit. Now, these plates, they have a very good support when they stand on each other, but still, I don't want to stack too many. So I'm actually thinking of using my shelf material for bisque fire as well. So basically what I intend to do is to put one of these plates, then put 1 or maybe 2 or 3 of my greenware plates here, and then just be very, very careful that yeah, I think I can only have 2. But then put 2, that's also very, very safe. Then put 2 here, and then put my kiln shelf, my plate shelves here. I don't know if you can see it, but I can lift it up. Then I have 2, and I can put another 2 on top. Of course, I can also put 2 below. I think I can maybe make 5 or something, maybe 4 or 5. So I can have maybe 10 plates in like one round form. And then, of course, I'll put this in the middle of my kiln, and then I can have some other pots around it. So that will be a very efficient fire, and still, I'll only stack 2 of them at a time. So I'm pretty sure they're going to survive the bisque fire. I hope you enjoyed this video. It turned out rather long, but I wanted to show you all the details of all this plate making, and I will get back to you with the glazing. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share, comment. If you have some good ideas for better ways to do this, I'll be most happy to hear. And I hope to see you again very soon. I will have one detailed video every Sunday, usually a premiere about 5 o'clock Central European time. Please join me, Otherwise, you can see it later. So, have a great day.